Welcome to K24 This Morning. My name is Jeff Mote. Of course, at this point of the show, we look at the big stories across your dailies and get some analysis on it as well. As always a reminder on the show that you can get yourself your PD for only 10 shillings straight to your phone. And the number that you need to dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, the number is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial that number, get yourself a copy of your People Daily. It's only 10 shillings and it's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. So wherever you are across this country, you can get yourself your People Daily straight to your phone. Once again, the number star 550 star 4 hash. Dial it and get yourself a copy of your People Daily. Let's look at the front page of that particular day that you'll be getting to your phone. On the front page of the People Daily, counties get 30 billion shillings as senators clash. Treasury gives governors major boost on the day of controversial cash sharing formula is set to be debated in the House, with hardline senators consolidating their numbers ahead of the vote. What does this mean? Because as they call it on the People Daily's front page, it is the Revenue D-Day. The debate is on the floor of the House again today. Last week, as it was debated, it was curfew regulations that actually halted that particular debate. How does it pan out today on the floor of the Senate is what we'll see. And this, of course, will also make the mainstay of our discussion today. And you can find that story on the front page of your People Daily. Also, in your People Daily, how Phyllis won 1.2 billion shillings fighting lead poisoning. After a decade of campaigning, Coast environmentalist wins landmark court ruling against NEMA. That story on page 12 of your People Daily. As you look at that, allow us to join Corona War, trainee doctors say. Students were on verge of completing their final year and proceeding for internship when pandemic struck. So even as we talk about a shortage in terms of health workers, they want to be on the front line as well and want to volunteer their services. And you can find that story on page 8 of your People Daily. As we talk about COVID-19, they want to be part of the front line in terms of the numbers in the last 24 hours. That concluding yesterday, of course, 544 recorded positive in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number across the country to 22,597. Those are some of the stories that you can get in your copy of your People Daily on the front page. Let's move on now to the front page of the Daily Nation. How Kenyan family stole billions in US. Makueni fraudster recruited close relatives to rob American taxpayers of 2 billion Kenya shillings. There's a picture right there of a light aircraft belonging to Jeffrey Silan Dungi, one of the masterminds in the heist. This light aircraft parked at a city airport. That story can be found in your copy of your Daily Nation as well. Also on the front page of the Daily Nation, cartels block locally made COVID kits in tender wars. We've heard of the so-called mafia house and the intrigues as to what is going on being put in detail in your copy of your Daily Nation. That story on page 8 and 9 of your Daily Nation today. Also in the Daily Nation, looking at political matters, ODM accuses Kalonzo of staging a coup in Jubilee. Interesting accusations made right there, and that story is on page 6 of your Daily Nation. Relief for counties as Treasury releases 29.1 billion shillings ahead of revenues vote. That story can be found on the back page of your Daily Nation this morning. Move it right along to the front page of the Standard now. Murkomen Sakaja on the crosshairs. Jubilee Vice Chairman Murathe warns of disciplinary action against senators who conspired under quote-unquote One Kenya Movement banner to shoot down county revenue bill. This is a quote from David Murathe. We are not yet done. We will deal with the senators for going against the party position. They will have themselves to blame for their parochial decisions. We will kick them out of the party. That story can be found in your copy of the Standard this morning, and also sticking to a political vein as well in the Standard's front page. The return of Raila, and they're talking about the politics of the day, as you can see right there. Raila standing next to Kotu SG Atwoli, Peter Kenneth right there, David Murathe, Jubilee Vice Chair, Senator Orengo as well in that particular picture. Really what could have been discussed right here is the subject of a lot of political discussion, and that story can be found as well on page 5 of your Standard this morning. Moving on to the front page of the Star, 25 senators plot to reject Uhuru Raila proposals. Treasury CS Ukur Yatani brokers deal to send counties 187 billion shillings. That story can be found on page 4 and 5 of your Star today. Also on the front page of the Star, there's a picture right there of DCI boss Kinoti and the DPP Haji meeting for the launch of the digital occurrence book. That happened yesterday, and you can find that story, of course, in detail in your copy of your Star today. So lots of discussion discuss, and of course today it's all eyes on the Senate. Sixth time the charm would it be, of course, even as we look on to that. Yesterday, senators talking about the fact that they will not be intimidated or threatened, but as you can see, the threats are already coming out as far as Jubilee is concerned. We'll be discussing that and plenty more right here on the show. My panel is ready to get into these particular discussions as well. Welcome to your newspaper review. Good morning. And if it's a Tuesday, you know the Tuesday trio is in the house and ready to roll. In studio, Arnold Malembo, the public policy analyst. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Asante sana.
We also have Joy, the executive director, East Africa Center for Law and Justice. Good morning, Joy.
Good morning, Jeff.
Am I the only one who's curious as to why Arnold has 3 sticky notes already fully written and we haven't even started the show? Curious case.
This guy reads in advance.
He's ready.
Some of us have leakage.
you know what Jeff is not saying is that I always come early.
Right.
Joy, as usual, is a late comer. So I have got the advantage of reading the papers.
Going through and writing your own
yeah.
notes before you
so,
go on.
you know, when she shows up late, how is she going to write?
We also have on Skype Justice Minor. He's a governance expert. He'll be joining in on the conversation as well. Good morning, Justice.
Good morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic stuff. The stage is set, of course, you're all ready. I think you can start with a story that we had run yesterday right here on K24, because today it really is a big day when it comes to this particular issue of revenue allocation and how that will play out. If you have that story ready. Now, 7 senators who are opposed to the current controversial county revenue allocation amendments, regardless of their counties gaining from the disputed revenue sharing formula, have become the center of the battle as different senator factions lobby for numbers. Both sides, from gaining and losing counties, will depend on these particular 7 senators to win or lose in the coming special sitting today. Giveson Minor put this into perspective.
A sharp focus is now on the 7 senators who oppose the controversial county revenue allocation amendments fronted by the government through Majority Whip Irungu Kangata, even with their counties poised to gain huge sums of money. Senators from both sides are reportedly on a heavy lobbying process toward the 7 to their side. The government side, led by Kangata, is attempting to entice the 7 to back the that basis formula, whereas the losing counties also depend on the 7 to defeat the one man, one shilling vote.
Wale ambao 7 wamesimama na sisi 18, hawajasimama na 18. Wamesimama na kaunti 47. Na ndio kwa sababu mlituona tumevaa ties ambazo ziko na bendera ya Kenya. Tunasema kwa umoja wa nchi yetu. Kwa umoja na usawa wa nchi wa kaunti ya Wajir na ya Lamu na ya Makueni na Kitui na kaunti zile zingine zote za Kenya. Lazima kila mtu, Mkenya ambaye amezaliwa Wajir, Mkenya amezaliwa Mandera, Mkenya amezaliwa Kitui, ambaye amezaliwa mkoa wa Magharibi, huyo ni Mkenya. Na hakuna vile tunaweza mgawia pesa, tupunguzie pesa kwa njia yoyote.
The 7 influential senators include Johnson Sakaja, who voted against the contentious formula last week Tuesday, despite Nairobi gaining 1.2 billion shillings. Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen also voted against the fronted formula, although his county was geared to gain 398 million shillings. Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala is also at focus for rejecting the revenue amendments, irrespective of his county being allocated an additional 402 million shillings, saying it was a protest in solidarity with Vihiga, which was meant to lose. Sam Ongere, whose Kisii County is getting an extra 162 million, is the 4th senator on the radar for opposing the Kangata proposed formula. Anwar Loitip of Lamu County also opposed the formula as a show of solidarity with his coast colleagues whose counties were set to lose in the formula, despite his county gaining a whopping 96 million. Machakos Senator Boniface Kabaka also stood with his Ukambani colleagues who were on the losing side, despite his county gaining an extra 367 million shillings.
Watu wa Central wanasema ati wangaiwe pesa nyingi kwa sababu wao ndio wanatoa kodi kubwa. Hiyo ni uongo. Tunajua na sisi ni wasomi. Hata ukiangalia statistics za taxation, hata ukienda kwa KRA website, utaona pesa ile 80% inatoka Nairobi. Nairobi sio Kikuyu peke yao. Nairobi ni kabila zote. All the 43 or 44 tribes za Kenya ziko wapi? Ziko hapo.
Mimi ninapotoka Machakos inapata kiwango kidogo sana cha kuongezea. Lakini Makueni inapoteza, Kitui inapoteza. Na sehemu zingine zinapoteza, Tharaka Nithi inapoteza. Ukiangalia katika matatizo ya zile kaunti zinapoteza, ndiko kuna umaskini mkubwa zaidi, kwa sababu kaunti ya Makueni ukilinganisha na Machakos, Machakos iko juu kidogo, lakini Machakos ina faida na Makueni inapotea.
Kajiado's Philip Mpayei opposed in solidarity with Narok County, which would lose in the Kangata formula despite his county benefiting a whopping 765 million more.
Tunataka kushukuru wale maseneta 7 ambazo kaunti zao zinafaidika, lakini wakaona ya kwamba Kenya iko kubwa kuliko binafsi. Kwa hivyo wakasimama na sisi na wakapigania devolution.
On Monday, Pastoral Parliamentary Group urged the 7 senators for their support to defeat the bill, saying it was aiming to benefit already developed counties.
We also want to appeal to those who voted yes to that formula to look beyond political inclinations and personal gains and consider the impact on more than 19 counties that will lose funds meant for critical needs such as healthcare, water and access to other basic needs that the rest of Kenyans have been enjoying for the many years and continue to enjoy up to now.
Leaders from the Mount Kenya region, however, have vowed to stand their ground, adding that the current formula is discriminative.
Yule mtu wa Koramu anakula ya mtu wa Komuranga. Yule mtu wa Tana River, yeye anapewa 18,000 per person, meaning kwa sababu ile pesa ni finite. Ile pesa is not elastic. Ile pesa iko, haiwezekezi. Akipata 18,000, amekula ya mtu wa Muranga na amekula ya mtu wa Kiambu. So what we are asking, tupewe pesa ya umma, and especially ile inatumwa kwa counties, kulingana na idadi ya watu.
A fiery debate is expected on Tuesday as both sides square it out in a battle that will determine the next county revenue allocation formula. Giverson Minor, K24.
Setting the scene of what will be on the floor of the House later today, of course, as you can hear it right there. Let me get to my panel on this as well. Joy, it doesn't seem like much has changed since last week in terms of getting some sort of middle ground as far as this debate goes. If anything, people are digging harder into the stance they had last week. What do you think happens today then?
I think one of the things that Senator Sakaja had done last time, if you notice the people who walked into the House with the Kenya flag ties, he had done his homework in terms of lobbying and helping a good section of the Senate to understand what he was standing for and convincing them that it made a lot of sense. And when he did this, by the time he went to the floor of the House, he was confident of backing. Now, you saw the dramatic end to the discussion last week when at 9 o'clock, Deputy Secretary decided, you know what, yeah, this is enough. We're going to be caught up in curfew and let us run away before curfew gets us, although it was already 9. But the argument was, it was to stop the discussion from happening, like to give people time to sort of reconsider their position. Now, with the 1 week to reconsider their position, what we are seeing is actually more lobbying, more discussion, more communication going on that, as you have correctly pointed out, doesn't seem to have shifted the ground much in favor of what, let me say, for what,
call it like it is.
What is preferable, the preferable formula. Now, the problem that I've had with this entire debate is that the politics is clouding the numbers. The numbers, as it were, like part of the reason that I feel aggrieved is when I hear our people need to gain, some people need to, it's as if those other people are not also Kenyans, who do not also deserve some contribution and some assistance to move on with life. The other problem that I find is the discussion is also not centering around why we are not utilizing the equalization fund. Because if the equalization fund was operational, it wouldn't matter the formula. That losing counties, the ones that have got less development and have a little bit of catching up to do, would have that as a fallback position. But that is no longer there. Everybody's having to share the 316.
Okay, let me just jump to Justice on this as well, because you've mentioned the equalization fund, Joy. And the thing is, Justice, very many people are saying, and we've heard this from various counties, that this fund hasn't been operationalized. They haven't gotten these monies. So even as senators talk about this fund, they're really being economical with the truth. It's not working. It's good to say it as a presser, put it on paper, but on the ground, the money really isn't there. Why have we waited this long to get this fund to do the work it should do?
I think we've been very slow in implementing almost entirely at several parts of the Constitution. And I think because of the pressure of politics, you can see the national government trying to, within a very short period of time, trying to implement some sections of the Constitution. I think in terms of trying to win the numbers. But I think the senators from the marginalized areas and their friends have got a valid point. If you look at, for example, a county like Marsabit, you'd be surprised to know, is as 40 times as big as a county like Kirinyaga or Kiambu. And in other words, if for every 1 kilometer Kiambu is doing, Marsabit would need to do 40 to 45 kilometers to be able to provide service to 190. For example, if you're trying to put up a dispensary and they have the public access that dispensary, and you need to do a road for every 1 kilometer Kiambu or Kirinyaga is doing, or even Kericho is doing, Marsabit would need to do 40 to 45 times. So if Kiambu is doing 3 kilometers, it means for Marsabit they need to do almost 100 kilometers. And it is the same for water, it is the same for road, it is the same for schools. And by the way, a county like Garissa, because I've been there, they saw a tarmac for the first time in 2019, for the first time. While a county like Kericho and the rest, Kiambu, have had some of these facilities and have taken them for granted for so many years, Garissa County, for the very first time, if there was someone who had not been out of Garissa, they saw a tarmac for the very first time in 2017, 2018. So you can imagine the amount of time and energy and resource that I think as a country, we still need to pump to some of these areas to be able to catch up with other areas. And by the way, there is something very silent people are not talking about. There are a number of massive projects that are being undertaken by Kera, that are being undertaken by Kura, that are being undertaken by Kena, that are not being, and that if you go to Garissa, you may not see any road that is being done by Kera, by Kura, by Kena. But if you, for example, recently you saw in Kiambu a road that is worth almost 11 billion. There is a road crossing Kericho that is worth almost 20 billion. Those mega infrastructure, you cannot at the moment see them being undertaken in some of these marginalized areas. So in my opinion, I think we are also being overemphasizing so much on county allocation, but the national government borrowing heavily on the session paper number 10 of 1965. If you see some of these national institutions like the one that I've mentioned, there is a much of resources that are being pumped to some of these areas that is not even part of the 316 billion or 326 billion that we are talking about.
It's very funny, Justice, you mentioned that, because, Justice, let me just jump in there, because really that was where I wanted us to go next with what you've brought in, and I wanted Arnold to respond to this, because, and this has come up, I think, from when we, on the third debate on the floor of the House, it still wasn't making any headway, and some people are asking, we're talking about this 300 billion that should be, distributed among the 47 counties, as if it's all the money that there is. There's a 2-point-something trillion Kenya shillings that isn't getting this amount of attention. Why don't we focus on that as well?
Well, the first commandment of a conflict is know the kind of conflict you are in. And I think as a country, we still do not understand the conflict we really are in. This is the 6th time we are having this motion going to the floor of the House. Mm-hmm. And probably today, I also do not expect, unless it's fully defeated or somebody fully wins, we might not really see the end to this soon.
So you think this is another stalemate in the making today?
It's a stalemate in the making. It's because we have not really understood the kind of conflict we are in. That's why I said the first commandment of a conflict is that know the kind of conflict you are in. And like you have rightly said, is that we have focused our conversation to about 300 billion shillings out of a budget of 3.12 trillion shillings. So literally we have focused and given a lot of our energy to just 10% of all that we are spending. Can the national government and the people who are pushing this kind of formula when sharing the 300 billion, can they apply the same formula when addressing or rather dealing with or dishing out the other bigger bit of the pie that is the national government projects. Are the people who are pushing the conversation around going through the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, are they willing to do the same with the national government pie? And you realize that this conversation mirrors specifically what we have always done when it comes to talking about salaries for members of parliament. Somehow, as a nation, we really have been pushed to a level where we always look at parliament and think that is where a lot of money is spent, and that is not true, because normally we are talking about 2.7%. And no one is asking where about 1.2 trillion shillings that the national government uses in a similar manner. So somehow, everyone else talks about parliamentarians taking home a big chunk of money, but that is just about not more than 40 billion shillings at any particular time. But the national government has got about 1.2 trillion to that effect, and no one asks them, no one audits them. So I'm thinking we have got an opportunity to expand this conversation. We have got a free window to expand and really make this conversation bigger than it is. I think the Senate has given us that opportunity. And for good reason, I think the young parliamentarians are actually standing up to this to the moment. What I would expect would be that then the National Assembly comes in to actually help us discuss this much better. Because I have seen a few citations here of where some areas are actually getting almost 70% of what the national government is investing. But that is actually spent in our name. Even as we fight over 300 billion, no one is asking where the 2.7 trillion shillings is going. Let's do away with about 700 billion out of the 2.7 trillion and say that goes to paying salaries and stuff. So where is 2 billion shillings going? 2 trillion shillings going? We are not talking about that. No one is addressing that. Yet this is a golden opportunity for us to look at that. So when we are going to talk about equity and equality, are we really going to talk about the 300 billion shillings only that goes to the counties?
Right.
Already the way we actually are administering, of course, the first government that took over the administration of the Constitution in 2010 somehow has really brought down the whole concept and idea of what devolution was supposed to be. Because all of us are busy talking about 300 billion shillings, and we have got a 2.7 trillion shillings that is actually being spent in our name. It is our taxes, and whether it is money that we have borrowed or we actually have raised as taxes, we will still pay for it, or our children will pay for it. Okay. So can we expand the conversation?
Joy, as we talk about expanding this conversation and this 2.7 trillion shillings that we are not talking about, on the floor of the House, let's not forget Senator Orengo talking about the fact that the reason why they are where they are is because the president was inaccessible, and that's why they've been in this particular stalemate. When you have a House talking about the fact that they still need the president to help them decide this matter, do they have the backbone to then again challenge and ask how you're spending the 2.7 trillion shillings if we can't decide amongst ourselves how we do these 300 billion shillings?
Remember last time I said, this is one of the things, the few functions the Senate actually has on their plate. Remember also in our system of government, the legislature is supposed to operate independently, not under the shadow or the direction of the executive, but independently. But in Kenya, for some reason, our members of National Assembly and the members of the Senate have been unable to emancipate themselves from the shackles that tie them to the executive somehow. And that's why you find, even in a situation like this, you're still looking to the House on the Hill for direction. It ought not be. Because in this particular instance, as Arnold has correctly pointed out, when you're looking in terms of your oversight role, the picture is bigger than the 316 billion that we're talking about. There is a whole lot more. So for example, what national government has remaining ought to also be spent in accordance to the public finance management principles of equity, ensuring that development, quote unquote, development in the Kenyan context, goes to every county, goes to every region, and the regions that need more get more assistance because of historical imbalances that have resulted in where we are today. And I like the point that Justice made, because when you're talking about 1 man, 1 shilling, if it's going to cost me 10 shillings to come and collect my 1 shilling, while for somebody else it costs them nothing because they can literally walk to Nairobi and collect their shilling. Now this is speaking figuratively. Then it means the value of a shilling in Nairobi is not the same as the value of a shilling in the NEP, for lack of a better, let's use NEP. If what I'm paying for fuel in Nairobi and what I'm paying for fuel in NEP are two vastly different things, then that imbalance, we have to find a way of ensuring that everybody gets something. But that said, like I said, I was saying earlier before the little malfunction in my microphone, is that wherever this money goes, it is going to Kenyans. And I wish the senators would remove the conversation of it's my people, I'm gaining, I'm losing, to, okay, is this the best way we can use our resources? Why are we saying that? If you look at the parameters in the revenue sharing basis, you will discover it's not just a matter of take the pie and slice it down like a pizza into equal portions and distribute. No, there are parameters. And like I said before, the more parameters that we need to look at is the one on poverty. That's one of the indexes that's bringing issues, because if the poverty index says you need a little bit of help, and I think that's where Sakaja's formula comes in, you have a little bit extra, 2% on that one. So that changes the computations drastically. There's the one on fiscal responsibility and fiscal prudence, and also how much are you collecting in terms of revenue, and how are you spending what you have been given. The fact that we've not had an Auditor General for so long also compounds issues, because the accounts are still not yet, the audits were done by the deputy auditors and the other auditors, but until the Auditor General signs off, you really cannot use this as a basis. But given that, be that as it may, there is still room for this discussion, because per law, they can still access up to 50% of what they had last time, because now we are assuming whatever you're getting cannot be less than 50% of what you got last time. So that if Sakaja's fails, there are a few others who are also lining up behind him with their own formulas. But at the end of the day, the senators need to come to a place where we stop looking at this in terms of my people are gaining, yours are losing, to equity and equality, because that's what the Constitution talks about when we are talking about public finance management.
Okay, let's take a break at that particular point in time. We want your feedback as well. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote on Twitter. Manu at the Hustler Nation saying the CRA formula is like hinging already marginalized counties since colonial era. So for me, I oppose this. All Kenyans need to move forward together. Okay, get yours in, of course, at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. Discuss more on this implication, of course, as they get to the floor of the House later on today, and also the political side of all of what we are seeing and how this actually weighs in on the discussion on the floor of the House. That and more after the break.